Welcome to the Ringer WNBA show. I'm Seerat Sohi, as always, and I am joined by the great Ryan Ruocco. He is an ESPN commentator. You know him from such great calls as Sabrina Ionescu with the greatest shot in New York Liberty history. I was always amazed that you were able to just put it in historical terms in that moment. I think that is very difficult to do. And of course, You Bet, which we have heard you used to frame the amazing shots of many a player, Caitlin Clark. And I imagine these days, AZ Fudd, who's I imagine you have to stop being so liberal with the usage of it when you're covering great players and great shooters like this.
It's true. It's true. And thank you for having me. I'm pumped to be on with you. Yeah, you have to, I've told this story before, but maybe now 8, 9, 10 years ago, my boss for NBA on ESPN and WNBA, Tim Corrigan, he had told me, he was like, hey, you have something with You Bet. Like, this is a really good signature call, but just be more selective with it. Because at that time I was using it more than I'd use any other call, and I'd use it for big calls, but I also would just use it kind of routinely early in games, whatever. And he was like, be more selective with it. And it was a great point of feedback from him, and I definitely took it to heart. And so now I do try and, use it to either punctuate a run or, someone's on fire or a big three or a momentum changing three or whatever, just big moments every once in a while on a non-three. Like I used it on a Hannah Hidalgo game winner that was a mid-range this year, on Asia's game winner in game 3 of the finals. But yeah, with AZ's first half, I actually, in round 2, I was feeling it like, oh yeah, I think this is kind of leading up to using a You Bet. And then she had so many other big threes that I was like, oh, wait, I kind of would want to use it again here. Oh, no,
Yeah.
So I think I did it twice for 2 of her 8 threes, but there was probably 4 or 5 spots where I felt like I could have.
It's so funny. You're like an orchestra conductor, but you don't know what notes are going to come up next, and you can't be thrashing the cymbals all the time.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
Well, what's funny you say that is the analogy I always give for TV play-by-play is you are like the score to the movie. People see the pictures. Yeah, they see the pictures. They see the movie, right? But my job is to help make the audience feel the moment, to help the moment come to life, right? To help contextualize the moment. And that's kind of like what the score to a movie does, right? Where if you watch Vito Corleone in The Godfather, The Godfather waltz helps you feel something about him and his presence, and, or Jaws, if you heard a flowery harp instead of the dana, dana, you'd probably seeing the same exact image.
Yeah.
Be like,
You're
oh,
like,
that's such a friendly
beautiful
shark.
coral
Yeah,
reefs.
exactly.
Yeah. No,
So
totally. That makes sense.
That's my job.
Yeah, I imagine as the shots got longer and longer, it became a little bit more fun to punctuate, right? Like there's that anticipation time of the shot going up and when it actually goes in as well. So
Definitely.
it's great. Yeah, it's great. So we've got a ton to get into today, but Ryan, I feel like I need to, because of your closeness with the UConn program, I basically just need to tell you about this history that I've been going down in a wormhole on. I'm sure you know so much of it, but I imagine that a lot of our listeners don't. So in the Sweet 16, Vanderbilt is poised to play Notre Dame because Hannah Hidalgo has basically decided that, she's not going softly into that good night. 16 steals in the last 2 games. Has I think the highest usage rate in the tournament so far. I think it's just been full metal Hannah from Notre Dame all season. They live and die with her, and I think we knew after the ACC tournament that she had a little bit more to say about this Notre Dame season. So now we have the situation where Shea Ralph, former UConn player, who actually played her final game of her career, was actually against Notre Dame. And I found this old ESPN story by I actually can't remember who the author was. I think it might have been an AP story that still lives on ESPN, where they played this Big East game that's actually been written. A book by Jeff Goldberg has been written about it, and basically calling it the greatest game ever. And what you had was it was a Sue Bird game winner at the end of the game, but also Shea Ralph, who started 4 for 5 in that game in the second quarter, went down and she tore her ACL for the 5th time in her career. On the other end of that was also Niele Ivey, who earlier that season had a double-double 10 assist performance, and it was the first time that Notre Dame ever beat UConn. I believe that was in January, and then Notre Dame ends up winning the title and beats UConn in the Final Four. Like the history is storied, but this particular year it's like all of these characters that 25 years later are part of it. Were part of it then, and I think the thing that stands out to me so much is that Gino Auriemma is still here. Like he's still
Yeah.
part of it. The players are coaching now, but he is still like on that sideline and as passionate as ever.
Yeah, it is amazing. It's definitely something that gets taken for granted, right? The fact that he is still here doing this, that they're still winning. I think there was a feeling like, oh, is the run over? Will they ever win another championship after they went through for what their program was a lull, right? After 2016, not winning until last year. But of course, in all but one of those years, they were still going to the Final Four, so like, which would be a crowning success for 99.9% of programs in the country. And where Gino is so good, and I am close enough with enough of his former players to get them to talk about this with me at different times, or just to be, somebody who they've, talked about this at different times with, is psychologically. He just knows how to push the right buttons for his players at the right moments. And we saw it last year with Paige heading into the Sweet 16 and the rest of that tournament run, where he pulled her aside in a way I hadn't seen before at shoot-around. And he had this conversation about the only pressure you need to feel is, what do I need to be for my teammates tonight? What do they need from me? That might be you going and getting 40. That's not selfish. That's what your teammates need. You're doing it for them that night. Or that might be, I need to be more of a distributor. I need to get rebounds. But the only focus should be, what do I need to be for my teammates tonight? And if you make that your focus, you're not going to feel the weight of the world on your shoulders about the narrative of Paige getting her championship. And he has those different kind of moments with all of his stars, I think, throughout the course of tournament runs. And that touch, that human touch, that ability to tap into the psychology of the player is, I think, timeless. And for him, one of the areas where he still is the ultimate chef of the secret sauce. And one of the best examples of that I can ever think of, when Sue Bird was at UConn, and she actually told this story in the doc we did on Sue, where he pulled her into his office and he said, "You're the point guard. Everything that happens is your fault. If we lose,
I remember this,
it's your fault.
Yeah.
If someone doesn't have their jersey tucked in, it's your fault. If they don't catch a pass, it's your fault." And it just gave her a level of ownership over everything that was happening that I think stayed with her for the rest of her career. And so that's just part of his genius, and that genius is still fully operating. And you know what? He's got a lot of great players to operate it with, including Sarah Strong, who is one of the greatest college players I've ever seen.
Well, he's pulling those same strings with Sarah Strong now, isn't he? We saw him before, like he really wanted Sarah to be more aggressive with her shot going into the second round, and we really saw it last night, right? I think the one moment that stuck out to me the most, and your broadcast partner, Rebecca Lobo, actually pointed this out too, was Sarah inbounds the ball, and there were a number of give and goes that were great, but she inbounds the ball, and she exploded to the rim in a way that made me almost have to rethink the way that I think and talk about Sarah Strong, because I think of her as somebody who is certainly has a lot of athletic gifts, but is more of a cerebral player. The joy of Sarah Strong is that she has the answers to the test before anybody else. But she took off from that sideline and got to the rim in a way that was like, oh, you are also a freight train at the same time. There was a game earlier. I was at the USC UConn game earlier this season, South California game, and he took her out for a moment because she was pressing a little bit too much.
Yeah.
He said,
Yeah.
she was feeling under the weather the day before, and she wanted to get back to being herself a little too quickly. And he took her out and just said, "Hey, take a breath." And he put
Yeah.
her back in immediately, and UConn now, they have the luxury of being able to do that as well. They don't
Yeah.
like they can take out players, they can put them back in. Like, they have so much versatility with what they're able to do because of their depth this season. But yeah, it's simultaneously, you can see the way that, he loves AZ, and I don't think that he was ever
Yeah.
gonna, like, hang it up before AZ was gone. And, we also, like, to the point of the tuck shirts, she also she had a story with, I can't remember the magazine, but it was written by Jordan Robinson, where she basically said she looks at the teams and, like, they don't have their jerseys tucked in, and she's like, "Sloppy, sloppy, sloppy." Like, she looks
Yeah.
at, like, the socks and all of that stuff, and it becomes, I think it attracts regimented players, but then by the time you're out of there, you see things through
Yeah.
his lens, and
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
carry that over to the WNBA. I think what's special with Seerat is that he's already having these conversations with her, and she's only a sophomore.
Yeah. That's a great way to put it. Like, the thing that stands out most is the cerebral nature of how she plays, how she sees the game develop before anybody else does. Last year, Dee and Sue were calling her Baby Joker, and I do think I haven't been. I always try and go into women's game female comps first. I have not been able to come up with a good female comp for her yet, but I do think the Joker comp is good. However, to your point, when you see that level of explosion, it's like, whoa, because that's a little different than Joker, And I feel very confident that as long as she's healthy, when all is said and done in her career, she is going to be a top 5 player of all time. I really think she's that good. She is so absurdly efficient. Her hands, and again, I couldn't think of a good female comp at that size. And I said the other day on the broadcast, Rebecca was trying to think of one too. The only players I can think of that it reminds me of her hands on the perimeter defensively are Paul Millsap and Kawhi Leonard. Like, and you really have to, you notice it on TV, but when you watch them courtside, it's like, whoa, they just have like these paws that they just like stick out and just like, they just grip things that you don't think they could. There's a knack and a strength there that you just don't expect. Then you go to the way she passes, her ability to handle. Gino used the comp with us the other day about LT, and he said on the defensive end, he said players around her, it's almost like being around prime Lawrence Taylor, where if he's just like in your area, he might just snatch the ball away. He was like, that's kind of like what it's like with Sarah, where she just might snatch the ball away. So you add her and AZ, who, you can make an argument they're the 2 best players in the country. If they're not the 2 best, they're 2 of the top 5 players in the country on the same team. And then add Blanca Quiñones, who is one of the best freshmen in the country, and at 6'2", has incredible guard skills and size at her position. And then you have a lot of depth. KK Arnold, Ashlyn Shade, Ali Zabel, even what Jana El Alfie and Sarah Williams give them up front. Kaylee Heckel from USC last year. Like, in order for someone to beat them, they're going to have a bad shooting night. And that can happen. There are teams, yeah, like South Carolina, Texas, and UCLA, if they're playing their A game on a night where UConn's playing their B- game, UConn can be had. I'm not sure anyone can beat UConn on nights where they're shooting like they did in the second round.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. They are just about a perfect basketball team, but you also do have teams that are gaining in on them and do have similar depth. I'm so impressed by Texas. I think that they're peaking
Yeah.
at the perfect time right now. Everything Madison Booker is doing. I look at her and I'm like, I kind of projecting toward the future, right? And
Yeah.
seeing what she did in the first 2 games here and just what we've seen from her, the Final Four run, things that she's done against South Carolina. I don't see, and this is nothing against Michaela Blake, who we'll talk about, and I'm sure gush over later. I don't see why she doesn't look at herself and say, next year I'm going to be the best player in the SEC, because Rory Harmon's going to graduate. And then we'll go back to what she had to do in her freshman year when Rory got hurt. And we saw how much latent playmaking ability she had even as a freshman. Now she reads the game so much better. She was a triple-double machine that year. Now put that I know her 3-point shooting is dropped, but I think it's just kind of what happens with when you are trying to improve a skill. It's going to go up and down. Imagine she has like a good 3-point shooting season next year. You have even more spacing around her. You bring in, I think Texas has some big recruit coming in. I can't remember who it is. Healthy Aaliyah Crump, who's also a great shooter.
Yeah.
I feel like, look, the present is bright for Texas right now, but I can't get enough of what Madison Booker is doing right now, and I think that she should be looking at next year's draft, especially if Juju decides to, or no, 2027.
Juju could come out next year, or
she could if she wanted to.
Yeah.
If Juju's not in there, I'm looking. If I'm Madison Booker, I'm gunning for that number 1 pick next year.
Oh, Madison Booker is going to be a star in the pros. She's a star in college. She is going to be a star in the pros. Her game looked like a polished pro game from the second she stepped on the floor in college. She is now, I think, getting even more comfortable with taking over the offense at different moments. We've seen some of her most prodigious scoring efforts happen just over the last few weeks. And I think that can continue deep into the tournament. Texas is a team that 100% could win a national championship this year. They are deep. They are very difficult to deal with when you consider their defensive pressure. I mean, they have forced by far and away the most 5-second violations in the nation this year.
Yeah.
So even late game situations, it's hard to get the ball in bounds against them. They have now a little bit more shooting because in addition to Jordan Lee, you have Aaliyah Crump, who's a big-time threat from the perimeter. And I also think you've gotten more out of Justice Carlton this year on the front line. And the minute she's played, they have depth there. But Madison Booker obviously is the hub. You know, Rory Harmon has been the heart of this team for 5 years. Madison Booker is one of the top 3 or 4 players in the nation. And when you look at that 2027 draft class, if everybody comes out that could, and you think about Booker and Juju and Hannah Hidalgo and Michaela Williams, maybe, Uche Izoje from Syracuse, if she comes out after next year, I think they're very confident she'll be back next year, even though she's age eligible. I know I'm forgetting some others too, but I will say this, the 2027 WNBA draft class has a legitimate shot to go down as the best draft class in league history. If not the best, it will be one of the top 2 or 3 without question, if everybody who can come out does come out. Obviously, Juju is a tent pole to that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I want they're going to be my team very soon. I'm Canadian. I want the tempo to tank. I think they want to be good right away. But I'm like, guys, look at this draft. What are we doing? And then that's running back another year for Seerat as well. Like you don't want to get good too fast here, guys.
Oh my gosh,
the
I know.
last time a USC guard went to Toronto, it went pretty well for them. So I think they should be trying to run it back.
Yeah, I think it's going to be. I'm happy for Sandy. I saw her. Saw her 5 or 6 weeks ago. One of the shoot arounds. I don't know what game it was. One of the South Carolina games, maybe at shoot around. And she was just raving about the way the organization has been thus far. And I'm so happy for her. She's a wonderful steward of an organization. She's a terrific coach, and I think the tempo should be pumped to have her. I know, and you know, what the atmosphere is like in Canadian sports environments, and Raptors games when they've been good. Oh my gosh, it's unbelievable. I've experienced it with the Blue Jays. Those tempo games are going to be amazing. And, I think if people want to go this year in free agency and they build a roster right away, good for them. If not, no problem waiting a year and having a top pick in 2027, because that will definitely be a very interesting draft class. And I think it's going to be hard for those teams, for Toronto to win anyway this year in the W. If you look at the top tier teams, if you look at Indiana and New York and Vegas and Minnesota, depending what happens with Fee, and I'm forgetting somebody who's on my mind as well. Whatever Phoenix does, whatever Seattle does. Seattle is a team
That's
that
a big
actually
question. Big question mark team.
They could toggle between being potentially like really, really good, or back the other way. It's going to be I think it'll be challenging for the expansion teams to compete this year. I think they're more likely to be competing for a top 27 pick than, you know, than being a real contender this year. Because I don't
Mhm.
think free agents are gonna flock
Yeah.
to the expansion franchises right away.
Well, yeah, I think that I think that's a great point because I think if you even look at the teams that are not expansion franchises that have been established in the league that have a team like even the Sparks that has been preparing for this moment that traded
Yeah,
Dominic Malonga for Kelsey Plum in order to supercharge their pathway and kind of get up to speed by the time that this 2026 free agency came around. Now maybe they were anticipating that it was going to be more of a free for all than maybe it might be, where in reality, some people just might be going back to their teams and getting a higher payday or maybe signing 1 year deals. I do start to wonder what happens with a team like that that made a big bet and maybe it doesn't actually come to fruition because you look at, I mean, it's like the top of the top, like Asia. Vegas has already announced they're giving her a supermax. I think that was a very smart strategic move on their part to just get ahead of it
yeah,
and also to remind Asia how valued she is in that franchise. But like I think about the unrestricted free agents that could actually go somewhere. You think about Jackie Young. I mean Jackie, she could go back. I think she'd be great. I think she'd look great in a Valkyries uniform, getting the keys, getting
yeah.
the keys of the franchise, like reunited with Natalie Nakasi. But there's just really attractive like, I think the Fever are up there as a team that's, like, a very attractive target. Who knows? Natasha Howard might be back, maybe she won't be. I think that they're a team that should probably be looking at, like, let's draft Gabby Jaquez and get Azurá Stevens and just
Yeah,
run, run, run. Because you can, like there's
yeah,
so many ways you can build around Caitlyn, but you can never have enough defense, shooting, and pace around her. So that's probably the way that they go with it. But they could go star hunting as well, potentially, right? Like, they could be in that Jackie Young conversation. The Liberty, I think, were incredibly prepared for this new CBA. They knew it was going to
yeah,
be top heavy. They bring in Chris DeMarco, who is a developmental coach. They're going to benefit from those 2 extra developmental spots, and could also potentially bring somebody in. You start to wonder about like maybe they go for like a Natasha Howard, or maybe they try to get like a Cody McMahon to be the pressure release in what is going to be a 5-out system, right? Like all these teams that I think are really really up there and could do interesting stuff. Um, the Mercury, I think they're number one on they're the team that everybody wants to play for, right? Then you start going down the list, and it's like, man, I look at a team like the Sparks, I look at the team like the Sky, and I'm like, who I think both have a lot riding on his free agency. I don't know what happens. Like, do we get to the end of the dance and it's sort of like Rike and Chicago are the only people left and they're kind of eyeing each other? Is it a Jewel Lloyd situation? Is it maybe, I mean, I think Ariel Atkins is somebody who is going to be underrated after the year that she had, but um,
mhm.
could definitely end up somewhere interesting. But there's a lot riding on it, and I'm watching these teams, and I think one of the biggest questions I have right now about the new CBA is there a salary floor?
Mm.
Because if there is, then sorry, go ahead.
No, that's a good question. I don't know if there's a floor. That's a really good question because, a lot of these details are still emerging. Um, but I would think most teams aren't gonna have an issue with that, if there is. I think what I'm curious about is some of these teams that have been able to get stars on team-friendly contracts, right, in the past to be able to fit more talent. Are players going to take the same discounts when the money is that much larger? For example, it's a lot easier to ask a star who is, making significant money off the court to take $60,000 less or $80,000 less than it is to take four or $500,000 less, right? Even even a situation like the Liberty, are Sabrina, Stewie, and JJ, are they going to say, hey, we all want our 1.4 million? Or are they going to say, I'm cool with one or 1.2 so we can fit some more talent in? Um, I think it's interesting because the landscape,
Yeah. Well, I wonder on the Liberty who you can actually ask that of, right? Because if you look at Ionescu, she makes the most in endorsements probably out of all of them, right? But then you look at somebody like Jonquel Jones, who is probably if she signs a max, 3-year max, probably her last big contract in the league, and is somebody that we know is never really had the marketing opportunities
Right.
commensurate with her talent and doesn't have that same, income stream coming in from advertising, coming in from Nike. Like, she's also somebody who's playing in Project B as well. Like, I think from a personal standpoint, if I was JJ, I'd be like, I'm sorry, I need to stack as much cash as I possibly can,
And
because I
that's
got in the
what's
tail end
interesting.
of this, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Like what players are gonna feel that way? Even some players who, maybe they're not getting that kind of deal from a contending team, but they might from a team that's, starting to poke through. Are there players who could be the fourth best player on the Aces or the Liberty or the Fever or the Lynx, or the Mercury, but they could go get paid like a supermax in Golden State, like that. That's what's going to be really interesting because I think, the presumption is, or the presumption has been that most of the top tier talent has seemed like they want to stay at their kind of incumbent places. That was the feeling with some exceptions, but that was the feeling, I think, going into the CBA. I don't know if the way this CBA is structured changes any of that. For example, even a Liberty, to that point about JJ, if Sabrina and Stewie are like, we definitely need the Supermax, and the Liberty were like, I don't know if we can also pay JJ the Supermax, and then Indiana was offering it to her, does she go? She like, hey, I'm not taking a discount to stay. I don't know. That's where the extra money is going to be really, really interesting. And
JJ
then
to
like
the
what
Fever would
free
be a
agents?
really interesting one because as I
Yeah,
as I think about a team you want to put around Caitlin, I always love the Dantas minutes because every time you get a stretch 5 around her, then you can just run those empty side pick and rolls all day long, and there's absolutely nothing a defense can do about it. And I've been looking for like that type of player. I think like Medina Okot in the draft is somebody that they could go after as well, if they wanted to go in that direction. Otherwise, I'd keep Dantas if I was them if I couldn't get that player. But I think you're absolutely right. Like, do we end up seeing a dispersal of talent? Right?
yeah.
Like, do you
Oh,
see? But
and some players, sorry, I know I'm getting excited about it because I'm
no,
like,
me
things are
too.
going to happen. It's going
Yeah,
to happen like
it's
in.
happening fast now.
Yes, I actually I was having this conversation at one point with a player during all this, and I was like, if the deal gets done, say like second week of March, third week of March, we're gonna have this bomb cyclone of women's basketball events that happens from the CBA being signed, selection show, uh, start of the tournament, into expansion draft, Final Four, free agency, draft, start of the season. You also mix in FIBA and Caitlin back on the floor. Like that's what we're in the middle of, and it's amazing. And there's such an appetite right now from everybody. One player I'm really interested in when it comes to free agency that I think could swing things is Kelsey Plum. She goes to LA, and if the Sparks are trying to build upon that, obviously, like you were talking about earlier, they brought in people they hope could be a part of building something and attracting more talent there. But if they're not going to be a contender, does someone like her all of a sudden say, hey, I need to go someplace where I feel like I can win a championship this year? And then where is that? Is that like she'd be amazing in Minnesota? Could that be if Kelsey Mitchell were to leave Indiana, she'd be the perfect replacement. I don't think Mitchell will leave, but if she did, what about New York? Like they've managed to create a lot of cap space at times where you think they couldn't possibly have more. Could she go to Phoenix and restructure there if they kind of retool some of the talent they had last year? So,
Yeah.
like,
The
she is a
Valkyries kicked
player
the
to me.
tires on her last season too. I
Yeah,
think and
right.
she has a relationship with Natalie Nakasi. I don't think that there was enough faith in the franchise and what it could do, but after the year that they had, I could see her looking at a team like that, especially if they are able to bring in somebody else. I think the team that dictates so much of what happens for everybody else, but especially a team like the Sparks, and it's funny because of how related they've been in the last little while, like the picks going back and forth, like Rakia, Dominique Malonga, but I think it's Seattle. Because
Yeah.
if Seattle is going full rebuild, or we decide, like, NECA just decides she just can't look eye to eye with Jenny Gilder anymore. It's been too many meetings. It's like maybe there's a world in which if Nneka, Skylar, and Gabby all decide that they want to look elsewhere, then I think that has a downstream impact. Now, Nneka can be looking at a team like the Sparks. I think she would be a perfect fit next to Cameron Brink, and Kelsey Plum, right? She could look
Yeah.
at a team like the Valkyries, have that Stanford homecoming. I think Gabby Williams is somebody who Gabby Williams fits in just about anywhere, but she's, especially in this era of basketball where
Yeah.
you want somebody who can defend all positions and she can still space the floor. She can still put a lot of pressure on the rim. She's an all-purpose basketball player. She could make sense on the Liberty. She could make sense on a team like the Fever. It's going to be really interesting. Skylar Diggins is somebody who I think, like, I don't know, you look at a team like Atlanta even, they need a point
Yeah.
guard, right? Like,
Yeah, totally.
they're gonna look
Oh,
for next year. Like,
and wow, Ryan Howard just played so well with Team USA. And, I'd be so curious what she could look like surrounded by some more premier talent. The other thing that's going to complicate it a little bit for free agency this year, especially, which is why I think you will see 1-year deals in some cases, right? If people are at a place where they may want to vacate, I could see 1-year deals this year. Is the core. The core ruling, which, a lot of your audience is going to know, some may not. It's essentially like the franchise tag for the WNBA. And the core for this year is going to exist in the same ways that it did in the previous years. So players who have been cored twice can't be cored again. But if they've been cored one time, they can, or 0 times, they can, regardless of years of service. That's just for this year. Moving forward, starting next year, and someone can check me on this, but I'm 99% sure this is correct. Starting next year, only players at the
6 years,
starting next year, the years of service matter. And if you're beyond, the 6 years of service, you can be cored only one time. So like that is, that's going to change, like, for example, as I understand it, like this year, a player like Nafisa or a player like Plum could still be cored, as I understand it. I could be wrong. So they're not like completely unrestricted. If they wanted out, they'd have to get some kind of level of collaboration from their existing teams, right? Whereas next year, that wouldn't be the case. So even that is going to be, and what's crazy about like all these different little machinations and clauses is there's such a condensed period of time for all of us to understand it. And then also for the players to be able to execute on it. And the teams.
Sure. And the teams, everybody involved, I think, is just basically trying to get as much information as they can. I think it's very interesting, too, that it feels like the league and the owners traded veteran player control for rookie player control with the rookie max. If you get all WNBA or win MVP, now you are eligible for the rookie maximum in your 4th year. Now, one thing I haven't been able to nail down yet is whether that maximum kicks in after your 4th year or the extension kicks in right away. Like, do you become a free agent after year 6 or a free agent after year 7 in that context?
That's a good question.
I think that, like, when I look at, like, for the player I think about this the most with is probably Paige, right?
Yeah.
Where if you are her, and let's say, there's a world in which everything in Dallas is amazing and hunky dory, but let's say maybe you're not so happy there after your third year. You could potentially just decide that you don't want to take the max, but after that you can still be cored twice. So you could potentially be cored twice and leave after, I believe, year 6 or year 5, or you could take it and get that max early and get an extra year and have to stay there an extra year. And I think things always have unintended consequences, right? Like you follow the NBA. Like once you start doing this to players, they start doing it back to you, right? Like I don't know if with Paige in particular, you look at Angel, who's another player. If she makes it an all WNBA team next year, that's a big question for me now. Like, can Angel make an all WNBA team? She's going to be in this conundrum as well. And then, there's certainly a little bit of friction in that front office situation, right?
I also think
players like that start to be like, you know what? Trade me.
Yeah, totally. And is there going to be some players who say, hey, I'm making so much money off the court. I would
Yeah,
rather
somebody like
I
her,
would
like
rather
wrestling
not make it here so we can bring in more talent. But you're right, because the rookie money jumps up, like the advantage we all thought Indiana was going to have for at least a little while longer may be shortened, right? Having Aaliyah and Caitlin under rookie deals suddenly may not create the same level of space that we felt it was going to. The example I always use from football is Russell Wilson with the Seahawks when they were able to build that team because he was on such an affordable contract and it was like, oh, you can, and then all of a sudden you had to pay him and it was a little tougher, right? Like, and now also a team I think about with this is Seattle with Malunga. You know, she presumably, if she, takes another big leap, she's a player who could be a foundational player on a contending team that's on a rookie deal, but does it last as long? And thus, does their advantage last as long? So all of this, I
Mhm.
think, is going to come out as we continue to get more and more details about
Yeah.
the deal.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we went down a WNBA wormhole here. There's a couple other March Madness things that we have to hit before
Yeah,
I let you go here.
yeah,
Kimora Johnson. That's it. That's it. Kimora Johnson has just been incredible. She's a player of March Madness so far,
yeah.
right? Plays 50 minutes in Iowa's double overtime victory. Played 44 the night before. I think she's played 103 total minutes over the last 3 games, 4 days. She had a quote. She had a great quote. Somebody was asking her how she's feeling. She said, "Hungry and tired, but happy and blessed." And I was like, "Ain't that the truth?" Like I
Yeah,
absolutely love that. But I just think it's great to see a 10 versus 2 upset. I think, like, we've all
yeah,
been kinda waiting for, the moment, like, that we start to see the parity in women's college basketball start to have an impact on the tournament. We're not quite there yet, but we're seeing, the signs. The signs are there, but just a great story, Charlottesville native, ball girl for the team growing up. Coach Mox
yeah.
convinces her to come to Virginia. I don't think that's where she was gonna go. She was a top 25 recruit in 2023, and now look what she's doing. Like, she's part of the first 4 team to ever make the Sweet 16. Virginia is going back to the Sweet 16 to, like, for the first time since the days of, Dawn Staley and who's a Florida coach? Who's a new Florida coach? Who was also Tara Weiss, I think.
Harry Reese,
Tara
yeah.
Weiss, yeah, she was. She was part of their glory days as well too. So I think just an amazing moment for that program.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. And there was a cool moment on the selection show where Holly Rowe orchestrated Dawn surprising Tammy Reese on the show, which was really, really cool after what Tammy was able to do with URI and now going and getting the job in Florida. But yeah, no, you're right. I mean, I watched that entire UVA Iowa game before going to do UConn and Syracuse on Monday. And, Kimora Johnson is just like the type of player that you love watching those kind of players in these games because when the ball's in her hands, it just feels like she can score at any moment.
Mhm.
I mean, and she's getting up, she's getting up 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 threes a game. There aren't many college players doing that. There are a lot of teams left that
Mhm.
aren't doing that. Look
Yeah.
at Texas and LSU's three-point attempts. So for
Yeah.
me, she's super fun to watch, and I
Yeah.
love having a story like UVA doing this. I think it's great. I think the round 2 games were spectacular. There
Yeah.
was so many tight finishes, and there was a handful of upsets, including UVA. And that gives us a story to track now moving forward as well. Obviously, going to be a tough task for them in the Sweet 16. But after seeing the way they played against Iowa and seeing how well Johnson's playing, you wouldn't put anything past them. And that gives us all something to be intrigued by.
Well, I mean, with TCU, you worry about probably their size down low, and of course, Olivia Miles, who had one of the great turnarounds in her second round game, and they won a close game as well. But you also, I just found myself so impressed with their game plan execution, like their discipline.
Yeah,
It's like Iowa gets 99% of its. Like they're in the 99th percentile in post touches and plays that
yeah,
they make out of the post, whether it's a pass or a score. I have never seen a team, not never, I mean, UCLA exists. It's very rare to see a team actually take them out of every angle that they want to go to try to get the
Yeah.
ball into Ava Hyde. And whether it's the high-low or the pick and roll with Stuelke or just like working different angles, it was so impressive to watch them do that. And Iowa just didn't have the shooting. I look at what I want from them next year and I'm like, man, like, well, they're going to have Wixo coming in. That'll definitely help them with their floor spacing. But I'm like, man, like, if you give Ava Hyde like a real pick and roll practitioner, like I'm pretty excited to see what they could do next year because they're like, look, I think they were young and they got
Yeah.
beat by a team that was more prepared than them. And now I don't know, like it's like I don't have a tactical opinion on TCU versus Virginia other than I'll be locked in. Like like you're right. Like that's like, I will be there no matter what. Yeah.
And TCU has become this interesting story now over the last couple of years in women's college basketball, right? They have the money to bring in prime talent in the portal. And Olivia Miles, when she went there, everyone, whoa, really? That's where she's going? And you know what? It's been great for her. She's had an incredible year. It's been great for TCU. And now here they are, one win away from going back to the Elite Eight.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I don't love this TCU team.
Yeah.
I don't love this TCU team. It feels very different than last year's TCU team.
Oh, it's definitely a different team. There's no doubt.
It's a different vibe too. It kind of feels like a bunch of transfer portal players that are looking at that are waiting to it's Olivia Miles' developmental playground in a lot of ways. Whereas last year they really felt like a team that you're like Haley Van Lith, the story that she had emotionally and just like tactically on the court, everything that she was able to do. That was a special college basketball story. Yeah, this year's CCU team, I'm gonna be a hater. I don't like watching them play. Like, I just, as much as I love watching Olivia Miles fast, I'm just like, a lot of like the first half of that game, it just looked like they didn't want to be there a lot of the times, And I'm kind of looking for Olivia to show me a little bit of like, watch it. Like, what did you go there for? Did you go there for like just to kind of like run pick and rolls? Because we know you can do that. Or did you go there to improve as a defender and improve your left hand? Because you're shooting all these threes because everybody knows you don't want to go left. So you're taking all these step backs. Like and I love Olivia Miles. I think she's going to be a number 3 pick in the draft, all of that. But I'm just I'm sad. I'm a little sadder on TCU. I'm a little sadder on TCU.
I like your skepticism there. And also that's why I think it's going to be an interesting challenge for TCU because as you said, UVA clearly was well coached, well scouted in their game against Iowa. So they'll be ready to try and harp on the weaknesses of TCU where they can find them. But I think that's going to be an interesting game. I think that's going to be a tight game between UVA and TCU.
I agree. I think it's going to be very nice for Virginia to get 3 straight days off. I think that alone makes a huge difference. All right, just to put a bookend on things here before I let you go, we were talking about the greatness of Seerat Strong, and you said that you think that she could be a top 5 player as long as she stays healthy by the time it's all said and done for her, and she keeps going on this trajectory. And I completely agree with you. And I just wanted to give you listeners have heard me do this before, but I just have to do it because I think it's so telling about how amazing Seerat Strong is. So when she hit 1,000 points, I decided to kind of go back and see like how many shots it took her relative to other players. So Breanna Stewart, 748 shots. Now slightly different shot diet.
Yeah.
Maya Moore,
you're including field goal attempts, not free throws.
Not free throws, just field goals.
Yeah.
Just field goal attempts. I wish, that is one of my pet peeves. I wish that there's a way to include free throw attempts in field goal attempts because it would tell us so much more about how efficient players are. Yeah. Anyway, that's all forms of basketball, but I don't have it, unfortunately. So
no, that's good. Okay, so 748 field goal attempts for Stewie to hit 1,000.
Yeah, so Maya Moore, because she's Sarah's favorite, 739. Aaliyah Boston, 737. Then you go all the way down. Seerat Strong, 711.
Yeah.
And then you do have some players better than her there.
She's absurdly efficient. Rebecca has this stat about her efficiency, which I don't think she's used it yet in the tournament. So I'm just going to tease staying tuned to it. But things she is doing when it comes to her efficiency are just completely unprecedented in basketball. And she's doing that while also being an amazing rebounder, facilitator, and defender, right? And there's something about her that just exudes winning. The next step for her is kind of what we saw in the first quarter of their second round game against Syracuse, where she decided to be more aggressive and took over. And Gino's been imploring that. We asked Gino yesterday, said, what do you need from Sarah Strong tonight? He said, I need her to remember she's Sarah Strong, God damn it. That's how he said it. And his whole point was, he said, we give her the ball at the nail, and first thing she's doing is looking to pass. He said, and I love how unselfish she is, but at some point, this was his words, at some point she's going to have to be okay with scoring 30. And I think that's kind of like the next evolution. She's an amazing passer. She likes to involve her teammates, but she also is the best offensive option when it comes to scoring as well. And so I think we saw Paige reticent to take on that role at times in her college career also. And then her last tournament run, she finally fully embraced it. I think that's the next evolution for Sarah is, can you understand it's not selfish for you to just go get buckets? That sometimes that's actually what is going to help your team most. And she's smart enough that it's not going to take her long to embrace that.
No, it won't. It won't. As long as she knows that it helps her team. It's the same with her, being a little bit more active in media sessions. I think Gino told her, hey, you got to take the pressure off your teammates, and she completely understood. And now we've seen her be a little bit more active there as well. But yeah, it's like, you're not a typical big. We're not giving you the ball in a high post on a horn set so you can get it to somebody else. That's you. We're calling your number there. All right. So when you mentioned Rebecca, that did remind me, one thing I really wanted to ask you is, I know you call a lot of UConn games. So when going in, hey, there might not be a lot of basketball to talk in the third quarter, how do you prepare for that? What are your top 3 or 4 things, or does it change all the time that you're gonna keep at the top of the dome to just have something to talk about in these blowout fourth quarters?
Well, I think, first of all, in these games, the early tournament games, you also want to take the moments you can to highlight the opposing team and their stories. And I think we really tried to do that with UTSA in round 1, and then also with Syracuse in round 2, to make sure that their players had their highlights, their moments, their stories told. You're uplifting their programs, because losing by 30, 40, 50 points to UConn in those games does not mean you should not be celebrating what you've accomplished that year or what's to come for the program. So some of it is preparing that. And I think we tried to do that. Even our producer, Caitlin Urka, I think did a nice job of that too, with rolling to break with different highlights from UTSA or Syracuse, even if they were down 40 in those moments. I thought there was a value to that.
Yeah. I learned a ton about Uche from your guys' call too. I mean, there was one point I think you guys were talking about, she hasn't seen her mom in 7 years. I was like, man.
Yes. Isn't that crazy? I can't imagine that. And as a father, I can't imagine that. It really, that's the kind of thing, right? Then we're also, for the way UConn plays basketball is beautiful. So you still can get lost in the action beyond the scoreboard, because it's great movement, it's great shooting, it's fast, it's rhythmic, especially the way they played in the second round. They were up by 50 points in the first half, but the way AZ was playing was carrying interest and entertainment in the broadcast, right? And then having our stories ready about UConn, having our conversations ready about the rest of the bracket or what's to come. We had a little conversation about USC and South Carolina, which was the game up after us, and projecting ahead to that game. I think having anecdotes and nuggets ready, in the case of AZ, we had talked with Gino for a while after shoot around, and towards the end of our conversation, he was telling us the story about AZ and her nails and how she had gone to him and said, Coach, I feel like I'm not shooting well. And he was like, come here, let me see your nails. He's like, your nails are too long. You're scratching the basketball and it's pissed off at you. Trim your nails a little bit. And so she trimmed her nails. And then you saw when she went to the bench at one point, and so we're able to tell that story. And that's also part of what we do in our prep. And so that is
funny
part
watching that. For a moment, I thought she was doing the Marcus Smart, looking at her hands after hitting a shot.
Yeah. So that's the kind of thing you're trying to do, just to, continue to give the audience something interesting without ever totally losing control of what's happening on the floor. And then hopefully, obviously, as we move deeper in the tournament, hopefully the games are a little closer and more competitive.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure they will be. Ryan, thank you so much for making the time. I also see you got the You Bet hoodie. Do you want to plug that before you go?
Yeah, I want to plug it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
okay.
Yeah, youbetshop.com. We still have them available right now at youbetshop.com. We're starting, so we sold out our initial allotment in less than half a day, which was amazing. And
Amazing.
then we restocked with a little bit more moving forward, and we're getting down to the bottom of that as well. The reception's been incredible. So if you want your size, go to youbetshop.com right now, because it's a look at the back, you know? How about
Oh,
that?
okay. All right. All right.
Yeah.
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 I like
We
it. I might have to get myself one.
yeah, get yourself one, you know, get yourself one, get a friend one, just get them for everybody you know. But yeah, it was a cool project we were able to do. It was really endearing. Over the last couple years, people have been making different Etsy stuff with YouBet in arenas and whatever. And so I started to think, and people had told me you should trademark YouBet. And I was like, yeah, you know what? There might be something fun we can do with it. So we did. And then there was interest from people in doing some merch, and it's gone incredibly well. And I think it's, a big reason why is because there is this, certainly in the basketball community, but more specifically in the women's basketball community, we all have sort of this strong connective cultural thread that we all hold on to together. And so I think, there's been some value in that. And that's helped to drive some interest in it. So it's been a fun project for me. Shout out to my manager, Aaron Bergman, and my wife, Andrea, who both were essential in the design and the process. And yeah, so go get yours at youbetshop.com.
Nice, nice. Well, thank
Yeah.
you, Ryan. I appreciate you. You are clearly one of the big characters in the coverage of women's basketball. You're a huge part of this story and the rise of the sport. So I appreciate you. I appreciate you adding depth with your
Good.
commentary and kind of being a voice to the excitement that people are feeling when they're watching these games. That's always how
Thank
I
you.
feel when I listen to your commentary. So we appreciate you. Thank you so much for sparing some time. Looking forward to hearing you on the airwaves as the tournament goes on, and hopefully get to catch up with you at some point here.
Absolutely. Thank you for those kind words. I truly appreciate it. And I love this role and take it seriously. And I am pumped for the rest of this tournament, the rest of the way on ESPN, and look forward to catching you at some point during a W game as well.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Ryan.